This is the MXtoday podcast here on MotoOnline.com. It is race week as we head into the first round of the Penrite ProMX Championship from Wonthaggi. We're going to talk all things ProMX. My name, of course, is Nick Still. Joining me tonight, it's Alex Gobert. Alex, race week is upon us for the 2026 season.
Nick, yeah, it's been a little while. Obviously, we've had the Boost Mobile AusX Supercross Championship in between. America's been going since early January, but you're right. It is race week finally, mid-March, for the 2026 season. Back to Wonthaggi, which I know you're not overly excited about, but I think the general feeling, Nick, is, and this is always the way for whatever reason with Australian motocross, the excitement actually begins to build in these days out from the new series.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like comes around quite quick. We talk about the off season leading into it, but it is the season ahead, Alex. 8 rounds between March to August, 3 full-time categories with MX1, MX2, and MX3. MXW National Championship at select rounds as well, and then a lot of supporting classes to go in each round as well, including this weekend at Wonthaggi. What better way to kick off the championship, though? And this weekend, there's a bit of a special class there as well, Alex. So, lot to look forward to.
Yeah, I think what I like, Nick, is when you get into the new season, and we've spoken about this plenty of times before, but to open up and know that you have the Saturday to build content, to build into the weekend, to build the narratives into Sunday. I think that's an important step that we, have become accustomed to. So that will be good. But yeah, generally it's been on the quiet side. I mean, there's been a number of storylines in the preseason, in the off season, that we've covered on MotoOnline. But I think, it definitely has, to me anyway, it's been on the quiet side in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. When you compare it to previous years, it's seems to be the way it's felt. But hopefully that drums up the next few days. And like you said, having that longer traditional 2-day weekend to start off the championship, we can build some storylines, see some build some content, and really make a weekend out of it as the Wonthaggi opener. But sort of breaking down the championship this year, Alex. Wonthaggi round one. I'm not a huge fan. Um, so be it. Wonthaggi, cool, whatever. That's it. Returning to Canberra this year as well, Alex. Canberra's a really fun round last year, except we all froze. So a little bit earlier in the season, I think that's a great idea. Gilman's back on the calendar. Toowoomba's back a bit earlier in the year, hopefully to try and avoid some of that Toowoomba rain that we sort of see throughout winter there as well. Appen, we've all got stories of Appen in the past, Alex. There's been a mud round when it was the hottest day on earth, which was quite interesting. Traralgon, that's back on the calendar. A lot of fun. Conondale is back. Conondale for me, Alex, it's the real type of motocross track, right? It's that natural terrain. It's flowing throughout the hills. I think that's going to be one that everyone looks forward to on the championship leading into the final round at Queensland Moto Park. Which, what better place to end the championship? QMP. Lovely. I
Mm.
like it.
Yeah, I think the breakdown, as you say, Nick, the series, obviously, I think moving Canberra earlier on in the year makes sense. When you sort of consider what Warwick is the one that I suppose Conondale has replaced in terms of the championship. Uh, and yeah, I think the breakdown of these particular 8 rounds, just on paper is relatively, positive, at least promising. So I think there's a few important rounds there. I like Wonthaggi. You aren't necessarily a fan. Canberra, I think, deserves a slot. Gilman, obviously, South Australia has a rich history in our sport. And, when you consider the options down there, Gilman has been the one in recent years, at least under the Pro MX. banner. So yeah, that's back. And then beyond that, uh, Toowoomba, there's a lot of I think from a Queensland perspective, a lot of people like that. Appen, very, I think, important in terms of its location there within Sydney. I think that matters. Um, but beyond that, Nick, you really have to circle, as you mentioned, Conondale as a bit of probably one of the more anticipated rounds of the championship. I think that just to see, I guess, motocross back up in that region, in terms of ProMX, I think that is a plus. And yeah, the obviously the Green Park venue there in itself, one of the favorites for many, many years.
Yeah, I really like the fact moving Toowoomba a little bit earlier in the season. I think that's a really sensible decision with, winter in Toowoomba. It can be dark and gloomy. You can get some rain that sits around there on the ranges. So it's probably a good idea moving that a lot earlier in the season. Bringing Conadale into it, that's fantastic. That club's been trying to get an event like this back there for some time now, and they've undergone a lot of work there as well. So that's really, really good to see. And then, like you said, Appen, I think Appen's important for that Sydney area. I think it's pretty rich, a rich tradition with, motorcycle racing around there, and a lot of these guys come from that area. So seeing an Appen there, like to see that as well. But yeah, QMP, lovely.
Mm. Uh, where are we at with QMP? Because I know when it first was added to the ProMX schedule, obviously more of a ride park vibe, which we know you're not a super fan of, Nick.
It's rubbish.
But
It's glorified trash.
then on top of that, I think there's obviously the fact that we're sort of seeing it year on year become the final round. So in one way, again, we're getting that continuity, but is it the right place to have that? So um yeah, I think generally I don't think it's been as bad as I potentially had anticipated over the years. And I think obviously things like Starlink come into play in that sense. Where else would you put it?
You'd swap it for Toowoomba. You'd swap it for Conondale easily.
Mm,
Um, Anything close to a metropolitan city of a city of any type, anything with a phone reception,
mm,
um, is the case. Like, yeah, put the championship at QMP. That's fine. The racetrack and everything's good. It does what it serves its purpose, but it's not the place to close out a championship. It is not designed for that. Um, that's my only thing.
mm.
So, but obviously there's decisions made behind closed doors that make it to end there. Um, and yeah, I'm not. I'll just keep beating the drum. I'll keep beating the drum. It's fine.
In terms of the championship itself, you and I speak to this a bit. So, Motorcycling Australia basically post COVID took over the Australian Motocross Championship. Before that, it was the MX Nationals for over 2 decades. I think we're at the point where the series itself, we want it to evolve. So, my opinion is if you have the governing body of the sport running these championships, so it has ProMX, it has the Australian Enduro Championship, it has ASBK, the Australian Superbike Championship. When the governing body is running the sport along those lines, I think it's quite safe in the way that it happens. So that there's always going to be the events, that the support behind it, is at a decent level, uh, maybe compared to what a private promoter could do. But then at the same time, you look at it and you think, if they're painting every series with the same brush, ASBK is being sold at the same level as ProMX by all indications, where it just isn't at the same level. Oz Enduro as well, it's at a different level, but again, the same sort of sponsorship proposals, the same sort of media package. Uh, all bar the TV. And then beyond that, I think the same sort of branding, websites, platform that it's leveraging, I don't necessarily think that that is right or fair to the sport of motocross and supercross. And there's two reasons. One, the teams and the manufacturer support and the independent programs between which participate in ProMX, and beyond that, the level of the privateers too, Nick, is at an extremely high level in motocross and supercross. Uh, the messaging that these professional organizations put out there, the content, the following, uh, the history behind them, I think that all really leans into the favor of this sport. And beyond that, I think the Boost Mobile AusX Supercross Championship lifts the profile of the sport collectively all through the months, since August last year when these champions were crowned. So I think we're at a point where in 2026, it can't just be a rinse and repeat, which I know you're going to say it already is, but I'm with you. They need to step up in ways and push harder than ever before to make an impact and put this series on the pedestal above ASBK, above Oz Enduro, where it belongs.
Yeah, I agree with you. And like we've seen the last 3 years now, sorry, the business model, the package that this is of Penrite ProMX. And it gets up to a point where it's fantastic, but in the sport and evolving and building, we want to see things get bigger and better. There is only so many people and probably logistics that Motorcycling Australia has, and spreading that across all those different championships, AEC, the Australian Superbike Championship, Penrite ProMX, and God knows what else. Like you said, maybe that doesn't do justice to the sport, and maybe we're at a point now, Alex, where it is better off the sport, Motorcycling Australia, handing that off to a private promoter that can build it and give it 110%, you know, of what it deserves all year round. We've seen that, that model works. We've seen that with AME and the Boost Mobile AusX Supercross Championship. We've seen new sponsors, new venues, new everything. It evolves every year. That's what I'm going to look for Penrite ProMX this year. What has it evolved from the first year to now? How does it look differently? But from early reports of it, Alex, it doesn't look good in the way that this thing is not being promoted. It is not being seen. It feels like this is probably the quietest in the way of excitement leading into the first round of a championship that I've experienced in a few years.
Yeah, I think it comes to mind there realistically. I don't see why we don't get to a position, and I know there's been conversations, but I think that if you're Motorcycling Australia, I think if you're Peter Doyle as the CEO, I think if you're anybody within the sport, you almost have to point to an AME group and say, that is a promoter, an organization who is doing a lot of things right in probably the most difficult environment of all, being Supercross. Logistical nightmare, mainstream type stadiums, in the cities, all of the rest. I don't think it's up to a private promoter single-handedly to take on all of the risk in itself. But, say as a Williams Event Management did back in the day. But I think we're at that point where I would be having serious discussions with an AME, with Adam Bailey, and I would be putting the sport of motocross alongside supercross in their very hands. Because when we say private promoters, yes, that's what they are, but you can get it very wrong if you have the wrong private promoter in place.
That's correct. And if I'm Peter Doyle and if I'm
Mm.
Motorcycling Australia, I'm looking back on the last 3 years post COVID and genuinely excited to see where the sport is at and the fact that it's ready to go to that next level. And
Mm.
be that that company can't do that because that's not what they are. They're a governing body of motorcycle racing. They're not a promotion company. So I think if you're looking back for them, they'd be genuinely excited to see where it's at. But
Yep.
that's sort of what I'm going to be looking for
Mm.
straight away. Um, and as we enter the next couple of years of Pro MX, Alex.
Yeah, I like it. It's y- just when you sit there and think about it, you think about the possibilities. So MA could assist with government type support, subsidies. Uh, and AME is uh, you know, I think they're proven to be on another level when it comes to attracting commercial partnerships. I think the unity, as we've seen in America, if you can bring in unity between supercross and motocross, I think that's obvious. And we're not saying any of this is going to happen. We're just saying what we're looking for in 2026. But yeah, you just sort of think about it and it makes so much sense. And yeah, I think that's where it is. The lead up's being quiet. I think teams, to an extent, have done okay in the build up. I think riders have been far too quiet in so many ways. I think it's up to those guys to potentially give more of an insight to their fans to take us behind the curtains further and learn more and become more, I guess, open in what it is that they're sharing. I think we haven't seen Dean Ferris, and we'll get to him in a little bit along with the other riders, but I feel like even he mentioned he would like to do more and that kind of thing. So I think that's where we're at. The riders need to push harder. I think the approach and the strategy of marketing probably should be considered by all in the sport. And then beyond that, I think as a sport, and we'll monitor it more and more closely as the season goes on, I think as a series, as an entity, ProMX deserves more.
Get slothy, put him in the JQ, and we'll
Yeah,
head to Wonthaggi.
yeah. But I think generally though, the big topic always is, Nick, when you consider the racing, Kyle Webster versus Jed Beaton part 3, this time for the MX1 championship once again. We've seen Webster do it twice in a row now. Obviously heartbreak there last year for Jed in the closing stages of the series. But is that the expectation? Are we thinking it's going to come down to those two riders once again for this title?
I think it's the best way you said it, Alex, is Webster and Beaton part 3, and that's the way it really is. Webster now a two-time Pro MX champion. Jed Beaton, when you look back at 2024, the tie between those two riders leaving QMP, there was sting in that for Jed Beaton. 2025, he's nearly a full race in front with points and goes down with a broken femur, and that ends his season 2 weeks early. There is an added sting in that, so Jed Beaton, he's got nothing else to motivate him than the last 2 years of what his racing championship has been. Kyle Webster, he's fantastic every time he gets on the bike. Um, it's just going to be the same thing. 1, 2, 2, 1. Kyle Webster, Jed Beaton. Try and pick a winner because I don't think you'll be able to. And I got a feeling these guys are just going to go put a hurting on the field once again, Alex. That's we have too much in the way of analytic to look at in the past to prove it, and I think we're going to see it for part 3.
Hmm. I kind of think we're in that danger zone of it's you don't want to become just an expectation of these two riders, who's going to do what, the same narrative again and again. I think it's important that when you look at them you really start to consider, okay, they're pushing each other to levels obviously that they've never pushed to before. But I was kind of thinking, okay, where do they go down? You know, how do they compare among the greats? Where is the high end, the ceiling of MX1 in Australian motocross as we stand today? You think of all the different eras and you can go back all the way to, your Stephen Gall or your Mr. Motocross type eras. You can go back to Craig Dack and Glenn Bell and, beyond that, your Lee Hogans and into your Reardons, your Marmonts, Josh Coppens. Like, there's been such a long history of this sport now. It just makes you wonder, is this the most competitive we've ever seen? Is that where we're at? Or has it been always this good along the way?
That's such a good question, and I think
Tough
it's
to
something
answer.
you'd have to go back and look and really work it out. But I think when you look at having 2 guys as good as Kyle and Jed, and then all the rest being as good as they are, I think you can't knock you can't go past that. I think that's something where we're truly lucky to see. And then as the way of being world-class riders, you know, Kyle Webster is the defending Motocross of Nations championship winning team for 2 years. Like, there is so
Mm.
much to look forward to in that. I think we're seeing something special at the moment. I really do, and I hope that's something that continues.
Yeah, it is. It's almost one of them things. It's almost impossible to compare. But I think what it comes down to is almost just enjoying the rivalry. Maybe we need more of a rivalry. Maybe, we know they train together as part of the Beatons program down there in Victoria. We know that they are, super nice guys off the bike. So all of that stuff leads to quite a calm, battle at the very front of the field. So I think it's really a matter of establishing what it takes to beat each other and who has the upper hand. Uh, I always say when we look ahead to these championships, you almost have to give the right away to the defending champion to say they're the favorite. But thinking back to last year, I would almost say that Beaton is my favorite for this title.
Yeah, I'll agree 100%. And I spoke with Kyle Webster this afternoon in some detail, and I said to Kyle, I said, you now have another season of me looking at every single thing to try and create a rivalry between you and Jet. I said, I'm reading into everything, and he laughed, and he understands it, he gets it. But one thing he sort of explained was the day that Jed Beaton did have that crash, and, it was almost said to Kyle, "Okay, congratulations, you're the winner." And how much that disappointed Kyle in the same aspect of he didn't want to win like that. That's not something he wanted. Um, and I
Mm.
tend to agree with you like that. And when you have 2 years of heartbreak in a championship for Jed Beaton, how do you how do you how do you gamble against that? How do you go against that? How
And
do you not have that as your favorite?
it's a good point as well because injuries have almost played a part along the way in both of these past couple of years of the championship. Maybe that's what we're looking for. Maybe, no hand injuries, no uh, serious leg injuries, no back injuries. Maybe that's what, if we're going to put on the list of this is what we want for ProMX, not only do we want a amplified series, maybe we just want these two to go head to head in an authentic way across all 8 rounds.
Yeah, and not let it be decided through something
Mm.
like injury. I agree, and I think we all secretly hope for that in motorsport racing that, the 12th man or whatever it is isn't the deciding factor to it. So I think that's I think, Webster, Beaton is that the storyline coming into it, Alex. But really, my next question is, who else can be the contender? Who else in MX1 can step up and say, I'm going to be a race winner? I'm going to be that third person on the podium. No, you guys aren't talking about me. Who is that rider going to be?
Mm. I think when you speak about who else should contend, Nathan Crawford, an obvious choice. What, second in the championship 1 year ago? Uh, Constantly gaining momentum in terms of being a 450 guy. Uh, but there's been a lot of ups and downs along the way. I think it's no secret that his preseason hasn't exactly been great. There's not a lot of detail. There's always a bit of this cloud of, I wouldn't say secrecy, but just uncertainty about where Nathan Crawford is at. I don't think anybody doubts that he is on a level that, can contend. I don't know if it's enough to straight up beat Kyle Webster and the level as well that I think that's probably brought Jed Beaton to over the years. But I think Nathan Crawford is incredibly close to that level at least. I just don't know, you know, there's so much uncertainty that it's really difficult to say, okay, this is his time. He can contend. Beyond that, I think the name Wilson Todd, I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's not a matter of if, I think it's a matter of when he figures this premier class out. Aaron Tanti, obviously more time under his belt. Uh, you know, Back from the serious injuries of the past and really wanting to get back to, I think, the level that saw him win this championship in recent years. And then there's Dean Ferris back, Nick. So I don't know if he likes to call it a comeback, but we're going to call it that anyway. He is probably one of the most intriguing storylines of this whole championship. And so he should be, because if he can pull this thing together, if he can win another MX1 championship, that will be number 5.
Yeah, like, those list of riders that you just went through there. I think you hit the nail on the head with Nathan Crawford. I'm hearing some comfort issues and just generally, finding a setting that he's happy with.
Huh?
I've sort of watched him at some local tracks, and there's definitely no stone being unturned for him. Which is, I'm sure those guys will work it out. Wilson Todd,
Whoa,
the first thing that
whoa,
comes.
whoa, whoa. You been out by the test tracks? What?
Huh?
What are you
Yeah,
hiding
the
out with
test
your
track.
binoculars?
No, I'm sitting in the bushes trying to hide from Ferris and the boys.
Yeah.
Um, and at Wilson Todd, he will work this thing out. He has worked this thing out. He can win races, but it's the injuries and it's those parts that just affect his championship. And that guy, man, is as tough as nails. He just keeps getting up. So a clear run for Wilson Todd. I think yeah, he can be a force to be reckoned with. Aaron Tanti as well, like you said, it's more time on the bike, it's more laps, getting back to the pace that he was at. And then Dean Ferris. It's what Dean Ferris do we have? Is he a 5 to 7 guy? Is he a top 3 guy? Is he like I do not know. Um, but I've got questions on what we call this. Is it a comeback? Where have you been? You randomly left City Yamaha. We never heard anything. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Mm. I'm probably more curious about it from a team standpoint is, Dean Ferris, we've seen him, you know, when you think back, what was it? 16, 17, 18 when he went 3 in a row with CDR Yamaha. Uh, we've seen him do the overseas thing. We've seen him try America. We've seen him, quote unquote, retire on multiple occasions. Whether or not he says that, he's obviously sat out and then come back and whatnot. Whatever way you want to label it, the fact that Dean Ferris is back doesn't necessarily surprise me. It wasn't that long ago. It was only 23 when he won the championship. We're going to call it a Yamalube team championship. We're not going to say a privateer championship. but then when he went back to CDR, the comfort just wasn't there for whatever reason. And I look at this move, as I was saying, from Penrite Racing Empire Kawasaki to take the chance to gamble and put, you know, I guess it's faith in what Dean Ferris can do. I think that's more interesting than Dean Ferris himself deciding to come back to racing. It's a big move. It's a
Yeah,
risk,
yeah,
and you don't know where it goes.
yeah. It is an interesting move. Obviously, Luke Clout not returning to that team. Luke Clout won't be contending the Penrite ProMX Championship this year, and then obviously filling that bike with Dean Ferris. It is a bold strategy. Um, it is an interesting strategy at that, but there's a very high chance it works out for them.
Hmm.
So I'm generally interested in his result, and that's one of the questions I've had quite a lot is where do you place him? Is he a contender? Is he a favorite? Those sort of questions throughout it. So we will see this weekend. I think
Hmm.
for Dean Ferris, Wonthaggi is going to be a bit of a slow start. I think it's when you see him on the hard pack style tracks, when you get to your Canberras, your Toowoomba's, that's when you really see Dean Ferris in his element of what he can do. So I wouldn't read too much into the result from Dean this weekend, but Dean Ferris is back. Um,
Hmm. Do you think
yeah,
it's time then that when you consider a Dean Ferris and what they've achieved, where they've come from, what they're still doing today, it kind of just earns respect, whether or not you've it's almost come to that point where if he's able to be competitive after the time off, if he's able to just say be a podium guy, at least. We won't say a championship threat off the bat. He may very well be, but just say a podium guy.
it's
I
a disrespect to Kyle and Jed saying he is.
Yeah, I
That's a
think
disrespect.
that puts him in that rare territory of, we spoke about where do the likes of Webster and Beaton fit in among the greats. Dean Ferris is one of the greats. It's
Correct.
been a full decade since he went on that run of championships, effectively. Uh, Time and time again, he's coming back. So I'm not the biggest Dean Ferris fan, I guess you would say. Not in a way of uh when I watch, I kind of follow the riders that maybe, have that bit more excitement. But at the same time, I think it's really interesting. You think of Eli Tomac in America and what he's able to do and sort of doing the unthinkable. It's almost like you're just wondering, is there a possibility that Dean Ferris can do that? And he almost did it in 23. It was almost already that type of feeling when he went on to win that championship.
Yeah, I agree. Dean's probably not a major fan of me either, so it's with at least it's like a nice little triangle there.
Yeah,
But
and I don't mean I'm not a fan in terms of like him or not like him. I don't really take personal opinions either way on any of them. But when I've looked, when you think of the riders in our sport over the years, I just sort of think Dean is one of those ones because he is so reserved, because he does just go about his business. Um, and maybe that's part of it. Just head down, getting to work, doing what he does, and the number one plates speak for themselves.
something that looks like it's changed with Dean. I seen him on a social the other day. He wants to be more active in this sort of
Mm.
thing. So I think that's a real good thing as well. So we'll see what we get with Dean Ferris this weekend. It's
Do you
that's
remember when
probably
he
gonna be
was traveling and vlogging and yeah, let's do more of that. That'll be
yeah,
good.
bring it back.
All right.
His people will work that out. Um that brings me to the question then, Alex. We've got through that. The next in line, after we talk about our contenders, after we talk about those riders there, your Watsons, your Waters, your Duffys, those type of riders, Brad West there as well. Those next riders in line, Um, and I think you see these guys, I think you see the glimpses of real promise. And the first rider I think of, Zach Watson, we seen that all last year. Now he's ended up himself with a factory gig. Um, I want to see what Zach Watson can do with this, and I think he's going to grab with both hands and run. I really do. That's a real success story from MX1, Alex.
Mm. It's nice to see somebody who put a triumph on a podium in an independent team, finish 5th in the championship, get the recognition that they deserve. That's no
If the triumph isn't that bad,
well, I don't know. That I guess my point there is Zach Watson is one of probably the most successful Triumph 450 riders in the world in a high level championship, not with official support, and it's gained him a KTM racing
yeah,
team
he had to get
seat.
off the thing. Real successful.
Well, uh,
Someone
shout
let
out
Austin
Beta.
Faulkner know.
Um, but you look at it and you say, okay, you mentioned Luke Clout. We know Kurt Gibbs retired at the end of last season as well. It's almost gives you that sense of a changing of the guard in some ways. And I think that's where the excitement comes. You sort of have these tiers. You have your Websters, Beatons, Crawfords, that very, I guess, current generation of riders in the podium positions. And then you have your Dean Ferrises who are still around. You have Todd Waters still around, maybe not at their peak, or definitely not at their peak, you know, of their careers. But now we're seeing this even newer generation of, your Zach Watsons come into play. I think even Brad West, to see him get that opportunity alongside Ferris, while yeah, I know there's people putting question marks on that. How did he get that deal? Whatnot. There's been flashes from him over the years in America. He's taken a different route to his career. Uh, very good when he was very young and went overseas early. Now he's back. I think the kind of youthful, I guess, wave of riders coming in, I think it's important. And then to see a Regan Duffy still trying to, you know, maybe not become the world championship level rider that he was back before his serious injury, to see him persevering, to see him finding a home there with that very sweet Yamaha team, the new team out of WA, gets to live at home, gets to do his program. Maybe the enjoyment that comes back for him, will play a role as well. But just that real diversity of riders and ages and experience that I think is, important for any sport.
Yeah, I think it is. And like you sort of mentioned, we're sort of slowly starting to see that generation of that older type of rider, Kirk Gibbs. Without him, Medi the year before, Todd Waters is probably the next rider on that list to sort of move out of that class. So seeing it have riders come into the class and really start to develop their own and become their own, I think that's only beneficial for MX1 moving forward. So a lot to look forward to there. And I think a lot of those guys as well, like I said, they have glimpses, they have real showings throughout the championship, and they grow with it as well. But definitely, I think all those guys can sort of look at the success of Zach Watson and go, okay, it's achievable. I can do this.
Mm.
This is something that can be happen. And, he sort of did that throughout Rising Motorsports. We're not going to see Rising Motorsports in the paddock for 2026. And that's another sort of team that we lost there. But there is a serious success story to come out of it, Alex. And I think that's worth noting.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask the question. I'm gonna start it
Uh-oh.
early.
Uh-oh.
Is this Todd Waters' last season? Is this goodbye?
This is it.
You think this is it?
This is it.
So you spent last year asking Gibbs
I
many
spent 2
times.
years. I
Yeah.
spent 2 years asking Mr. Gibbs that. Yes,
Have you
2.
ever asked Todd Waters the question before?
Sure did. Asked
Mm.
him, I want to say Canberra last year, and that's when he confirmed to me he was going again. So, screw it. I'll bring it out at Wonthaggi. Everyone look for that. Todd
Right.
Waters, I'm asking you if you're going to retire end of the season.
Yeah, I think
Respectfully.
it's almost like a bit of
Respectfully.
a subplot when you think of Waters, Ferris, bit of a rivalry there over the years. That'll be interesting. I don't know. I don't really know where to say Todd Waters will be at this time. I think his team looks good. That's a plus. But yeah, there's got to become a point where the team ownership, the team management, the next step comes into play, and just figuring out that transition, figuring out how you get a rider in that place is important.
Dean
I want
Ferris
to
returns when Kirk Gibbs leaves. Read into that.
mm, I want to it kind of got me thinking, this Empire Kawasaki 450 only program, just speaking about Todd there and his team and what he's doing, it just got me thinking, do you agree with the 450 only structure that Empire has put in place?
I did.
Risky.
I did. It is risky, and I really saw the potential in what was going to be the case, and I looked at that with our Yamaha crew. So from what we thought, it was going to be Penrite Go 24 racing for Brett Metcalf, which would be your MX3 development, your Team Green guys. You then sort of transition over to JPM Kawasaki, and then you find yourself at Penrite Racing Empire Kawasaki. We've seen that with CDR Yamaha, Monster Energy Yamaloop Yamaha, and Monster Energy WBR. So I understand that, but that's now sort of broken with Brett Metcalf and Go 24 leaving. So it's definitely interesting. I can understand why Tyson Cherry sort of made that decision, but it's a risky one, that's for sure.
Mm. Uh, Yuriv Konsky explained it to me like this once when I said to him about the value. Why are you in MX3? Why are you in MX2 and taking it so seriously? And then obviously MX1. And the point was made, if you're talking about broadcast time and you can say, okay, I'm in each of these three categories, when ProMX is on the championship, you have a relevance in that broadcast slot commercially throughout almost the entire program. That is something that I think is typically maybe understated in our sport. But yeah, just interesting. There's many ways that you can go about it. But yeah, it's almost like going, when you look at it, Empire is all in on the 450 class, all in on, trying to bring home that championship and focusing on the development of the KX 450. So yeah, just like I said, just a number of, I think, storylines kind of just bubbling beneath the surface.
And that really does bring in another team to the pits. Like we did see JPM there last year with Haruki Yokiyama and then Chet Alsop, but now seeing him there with the JPM Kawasaki, and that really leads me to thinking, Alex, MX2 for
Mm.
2026, a new championship and a new champion will be crowned. Brody Connolly in the United States there. So we lose him from the championship. We will see a new MX2 champion. And there's a few to pick from. There's a lot to pick from, Alex.
Yeah, there is. Obviously, Ryder Kingsford is I think to me, the one that comes to mind when you think of, he won that SX2 championship. Directly after that, he defected there from Monster Energy, Yamalupe, Yamaha to go and join to effectively take the place of Brody Connolly there at Honda Racing. So that, as far as the sport of motocross and supercross goes, was one of the very big moves that we've seen in recent years. I think it's important to take that into account. How he, starts this Pro MX season in terms of Ryder Kingsford, I'm not sure. We know that he had that injury early on the Honda. We know he won't be at 100%, but when you look, within that Honda racing transporter or transporters, there's Cade Kingsford stepping up from MX3 as champion into MX2. Alex Larwood will be as competitive as ever. When you look
There's your
across to
champion.
the yeah,
Yep.
when you look across to the Yamaha team, you have Noah Ferguson there who wants to make this year count for himself. He wants to prove that in taking over from where Ryder Kingsford was last year, that he can be one of the guys. And we saw him win last time out at QMP. Uh, Dylan Walsh joins Byron Dennis at KTM Racing Team. Reed Taylor's back at Raceline Husqvarna T-Dub Racing. Jace Cosford and Ryan Alexanderson, as you mentioned, at the JPM 360 Developments Kawasaki team. That's new. Reese Budd, Moto Coach Elite Honda, not at the level in terms of team infrastructure that some of these others have, but he has the results on the board, so it's worth, you know, taking note of.
There's a few things in those group of riders, Alex, but the one that really sticks out to me is Alex Larwood. Um, Alex Larwood staying on the same team once again, injury free leading into the championship. He's had the success throughout motocross, supercross, and I think there is now a strong belief with Larwood that he can be that guy. Um, I think Larwood is going to be a champion at the end of the year. I think he's going to have his hands full with his teammates there for sure, with both Kingsfords. Cade, I feel, is going to be exceptionally good on that Honda. Think it's going to be, Ryder might not be the first Kingsford home. There could be a little rivalry with them two on the track for sure. And then the question mark for me is Noah Ferguson on that Monster Energy Yamaha. He's going to be incredible, but can he fix those little errors that he has early in the motos or some little tip overs here and there that sort of cost him? If he can mitigate that from happening, I think you're the full package there as well. And I think that team will really build with him to do that. Cosford, he's a little bit behind the eight ball. He's carried an injury into the season and it's been a bit of a slow run so far. Alexanderson, he's been on the bike now for a couple of weeks and done some racing. So I think he's going to be exceptionally good. But the one for me, Dylan Walsh. Um, I think that's probably going to be a standout rider there as well. So Dylan Walsh, Alex Larwood, that's sort of who I'm leaning to the championship wise, Alex.
Mm. Yeah, I think with Ferguson, I think he's really going to benefit from that dynamic there at the Yamalube team. If I'm him, and knowing that he's bounced around, he's been at Honda, he's been at Gas, and obviously part of KTM as well. He's been part of very large teams along the way, but obviously he's come from that privateer background. I think if you are Noah Ferguson, he needs to absorb as much as possible from the experience around him. I think he really needs to buy into what the likes of Mike Ward have to say, what the likes of, the entire group there around him have to say. And he is their number one hope in terms of this MX2 championship. We see Sawyer Nakajima, the two-time All Japan, IA2, the 250 class champion over there. Yamaha Motor Corporation has effectively placed him into the Yamalube team, which I think is a massive deal for our sport, to have the factory, place a rider like that, 23 years of age, I think, into our championship. He's been at the Nations. He's got a decent amount of experience and he's good. But when you come from Japan, it's not like you can go straight over and join Star Racing, uh, at this particular level. So Australia makes sense. I think that will be interesting. And we'll get to it a little bit more in a bit. But obviously, the arrival of Lachlan Turner, Lala doing what she's doing there at Yamalube, the whole way that team has been structured for this year is very different, very new. And, I think it's really fascinating to see just how competitive Ferguson can be. For me, when I look at those groups of riders, I'm still, a big Ryder Kingsford fan. I know there's been almost this talk of how's he going to adapt to the Honda? What can he do? Can he do it? Is the bike as good? Does the team give him that attention that maybe he is used to or accustomed to? Uh, I firmly believe if you are a championship caliber rider, you figure it out. Winners win.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. He figures it out. He figures it
yeah,
out for sure. I
it's
think it's
just a matter
fine
of
if
if
it's a
it's
bit.
soon enough. And then, yeah, I like this class. I don't really circle the riders on it to say, you know, it's very difficult to call what way it's going to go. And I think that's the great thing about MX2 leading into 2026.
Yeah, it's the unknown, right? And when you talk about Ferguson, I feel like having that sole expectation of you to be the guy, I think that really works for him, and people can
Mm,
rally around that. As for Reese Budd, I think maybe the less team structure not being so much out of the truck or have the limelight on it. I think that might even benefit him to be able to build and people to rally around him as he does this thing. I think there'll be a lot to look forward to in that. And like you said, with Ryder Kingsford there, he will work this out for sure. He is a champion.
mm.
Um, but if it's a slow start, I think that's okay. And I think there's going to be a lot of importance in that as well. But like you
What
said, you
about,
can.
sort of was just coming to mind, Seth Birchall, part of now Monster Energy, WBR, Yamaha. They're obviously primarily their focus is on MX3, but to see him kind of drafted into that team again and I guess an evolution of the support that he has from Yamaha for this year, I think that will be interesting to monitor. What we're seeing more MX3 kids from last year step up. What Alsop, Woods, Hantis, a mix of them. I don't have the list in front of me. I don't even know if the riders list is out yet, Nick, but the depth, I think, in this MX2 class is potentially, you know, as good as ever. We'll say that.
Throw a blanket over it. And
Mm.
that's how MX2 racing usually is. So I think, it might be a benefit not seeing Brody Connolly in MX2 because it was starting to be that expectation that it was the Brody Connolly show, which, Ryder Kingsford broke that
You
throughout the
sure he's not here?
season. He might be here. He's not racing though. Um, does he race at all
Hmm.
this season?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been the question. I have asked the question. Obviously, Connolly didn't get to line up in America for 250SX East as he planned. I've asked the question, do we see him? Did not get an answer. So,
That's always a worry
mm,
when you don't
yeah.
receive an answer. But um, Alex, this weekend, MX3 as well. That's usually one of the classes which is a real show to watch. It hasn't, last year, it didn't sort of go that way. It did turn out to be a bit of a sleeper throughout the season, but Years past, Alex, MX3 has been fantastic to watch, and it really sees these guys of, who we're going to be talking about in
Mm.
MX2
I
for years to come.
I don't
You feel like
even necessarily. I've said this before. I don't find a point in previewing the likes of an MX3 category that much. You can point out, okay, Hayden Draper's at WBR or whatever you want to point out. The fact is, when you get to Wonthaggi, there's always these different contenders, these different kids that emerge, uh, developing at different times on different timelines. And it's one of those ones you almost just enjoy watching it unfold.
you do, because there's certain riders that sort of show a lot of glimpses throughout the season, and that's the exciting part about it. But also this weekend, Alex, the FIM Oceania Women's Motocross Cup, the
Oh.
MX85 Cup, and later on in the year, the MX65 Futures as well. So the FIM Oceania Women's Motocross Cup this weekend, excellent. We seen that last year for the first time at Wonthaggi, and it was huge. It was great to see, and I'm really looking forward to it this weekend. And we get the showdown of Lala Turner and Charlie Cannon to see,
Mm.
and then maybe some other girls sort of throw it into the mix there as well. But that is definitely going to be one of the talking points leading into that class this weekend.
Yeah, I think on that, uh, again, if I'm motorcycling Australia and you have Team USA, you have New Zealand, but in particular, Team USA, you have Lala Turner. She signed a 2-year deal with YMA, with Yamaha Motor USA. Uh, we have arguably one of the most fascinating matchups in the sport between Lala Turner and Charlie Cannon. You know, the multiple time American champion, the multiple time Australian champion, all of the above. When you look at this, there's no reason that Lala Turner shouldn't be all over a Racer X, uh, a Vital MX, for example. And we're going to do our part on MotoOnline.com, the USA edition leading into the weekend, because what 85% of our audience there is American. But I think it's such a special opportunity to see not only Lala Turner here in Australia, like we saw last year, but seeing her on a team, seeing the red corner versus the blue corner, and then obviously Charlie Cannon, uh, just an unbelievably good role model for young female participation in this sport. We've seen it all over Monster Energy SMX World Championship or Supercross coverage throughout January. She's based in the US now. There are so many storylines there that are probably being undersold. And again, I think it's time that the sport steps up and showcases those stories. It's not just
Um,
about who wins on Sunday, it's about what we're being presented on the way in, because this is the closest that we get to MXON for the women. And these are two of the very best women in the world.
And, Alex, this class of MXW, be it here in Australia, be it in America, it is growing at a ridiculously fast pace, and the competition in the class as well is incredible. And we get
Oh.
to see that between Charlie, Lala. We get to see it MXW, all the girls in that group. It's seriously impressive, and it is gaining
Um,
momentum quick. And if we can help do that, that's a great thing for the sport, Alex. So I'm really
mm.
looking
Oh,
forward to that this weekend.
I wanted to take a moment as well, Nick. We wanted to send our best thoughts to Eliza Dennis, obviously the young Yamaha Junior Racing, very talented young rider, seriously injured in the to start off this year. So we wish her the very best. Younger sister of Byron Dennis, obviously too, and yeah, just wanted to take note of that because yeah, our thoughts are definitely with her and her family.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving forward with that, but Alex, that's Penrite ProMX. That's if that was a preview, I think we're done. I'm sick of talking about it. I'm ready to get down to Wonthaggi and get this championship underway for sure.
Mm. What are you most excited about? You look ahead, we're in March. What excites you, Nick? What, not just about this weekend, but looking down the stretch?
Looking down the stretch in Penrite ProMX, I'm looking to see how this thing I'm
Mm,
looking to see how this thing breaks down. I want to see I want to see the championship evolve. That's what I'm looking forward to. And if it doesn't, then we look at what we have to do to make it evolve. That's
mm.
what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I think there's value in the media monitoring these situations to shed light on things, to do stuff along the way, to open the conversation. That is what MX today is all about. Um, I just hope that we have more than a two-rider race at the front of this MX1 field, but I think it's what we're going to see. So, yeah, time
Yeah.
will tell, Nick, but thank you. Appreciate it.
Been a lot of fun. Thank you, Alex. And remember to head over to the website, MotoOnline.com, for the latest and across all socials as well. MotoOnline AUS. There'll be lots of stuff heading into the weekend, all across the weekend. But until then, that's Alex Gobert. I'm Nick Still, and we'll see you on the next one.